Church security teams. Let's talk about some of the considerations you need to have for your church security team. Welcome to the Patriot Training YouTube channel. My name is Clay Howell. I am the owner and head firearms instructor at Patriot Training. The topic of today's video is church security teams, church safety teams, church response teams. 3 different names that mean about the same thing. And you better believe I've got some opinions on this because I have served in that capacity for the better part of the last 8 years as both team leader and as a regular team member as well. And it's led me to gain some valuable experience that I would like to share with you and that I share with churches when they contract me to teach their response teams. And let's get some of this out online, because when we are at our places of worship, whatever religion that may be, that is sacred to you, my friends. And that is one thing that, people go to church and they don't expect to have to get into a fight. And sadly, so many of these active shooters will try to target churches because they know that that mentality persists. So let's talk about that. The first thing I want to do is I want to make a very clear clarification. I have talked to a couple of churches, and I'm not going to name them, there's no point, and they get very angry. And these are Christian churches, and they get angry at me, or they will not contract Patriot Training because we offer this training to persons of any faith. And if that's how you feel, and to these people that's how they felt, I would postulate that you should think about what would Jesus do. Would Jesus want these persons of other beliefs to be safe or not? And I tend to think that the answer, broadly speaking, I certainly cannot speak for Jesus Christ. No one can. But I would say in general, the answer would be yes. He would want these people to be safe, if for no other reason, so that we Christians could witness to them and lead them to the Lord. Now, that said, is it possible that God might have in store for someone doom because they have rebelled? Well, yes, the Bible is absolutely chock full of stories where that's happened, and that, could continue to happen this day. I don't know. That's not the purpose of this YouTube video. But I will say this. If you are a Christian worth their salt, you will not mind that I teach not only Christians, but persons of other faiths as well, these valuable tips for safety while they are performing their rituals in their worship services. Let's talk about the basics. A church response team member, and I like the term response team as opposed to security team and as opposed to safety team, and the reason why is because of semantics. Words mean things, and there are a very small number of churches that actually have a real security team where they are licensed armed guards, properly insured, et cetera, et cetera. There are maybe a handful of churches all across the country that have that going on, and they probably need it. I know one in particular that's not too far from me. That's what they do, and that's what they need. And nevertheless, that team, it's the right semantic for them. For most churches, I would suggest that a response team is probably the correct name. And the basics of being on a good response team would be, number one, being welcoming. Have a big friendly smile. I remember several years back, I was the head of a response team for a church that I used to attend, and we had a new fellow come onto the team, and he was very energetic. He was very gung-ho. He really wanted to do this. And that's the quality I admire most in a prospective team member, is the want to, the drive. And he was assigned to basically shadow me. It was one of his first days. And I told him, I said, hey, man, the biggest thing you can do is have a big goofy grin on your face at all times. We are welcoming. We want people to come to church. People need Jesus, that's for sure. And, there have been some people over the years that when I tell them this, they look at me shocked. And several others that either have RBF or, just a near permanent scowl on their face. And I tell them, I'm like, hey, lighten up, loosen your face up a little bit. Just don't look angry. Let's get that countenance in order so that people feel like you're welcoming them there. The second is to be watchful. And being watchful is not like that squirrel in your backyard that is constantly on the lookout for the hawk or the coyote, just, like a timid little forest creature. This being watchful, as I like to recommend, is more like that sheepdog that's guarding his flock of sheep. And he's looking left and he's looking right, and everything he does is on purpose. He is, believe it or not, he's actively hunting the evildoer. And that's what we should be doing. We should be actively hunting the evildoer. We are looking for nonverbal cues as to who is up to no good. And when I teach the class, I go into great detail. That's an hour-long subject by itself. We demonstrate some of the more common nonverbal cues of somebody who's up to no good, because that is the person that you're going to need to communicate with. And the third is being prepared. And being prepared, our society says it's a good thing to be prepared, but when somebody is prepared, our society tends to call that person paranoid. I've got a gun. What do I have to be paranoid about? But more importantly, any situation is easier to deal with if you are prepared for it than if it takes you by surprise. So you should prepare for the most likely things and go on down the list from there. Speaking of which, just a little bit of a spoiler for the class I teach. The most likely thing you need to prepare for if you're on the response team is not an active shooter. That's very, very unlikely. The most likely thing is you're going to have to assist with some kind of medical condition that befalls one of your fellow parishioners. So medical threats and weather and environmental threats are far more common than agitated persons or active killers. Let's talk about response team positions. You need to position your people to be able to respond to threats most effectively. And the vast majority of churches, I'll just go ahead and give this information away, the vast majority of churches and synagogues and temples and things like that need no more than about 3 active positions at any given point in time, if that. And the 3 positions, number 1 I call post, and this is somebody that can watch the parking lot and observe for that weather phenomenon to start or keep an eye out for a potential active killer. There needs to be somebody roaming, and this person can spend part of their time in the worship center or the sanctuary, and they can roam around. And if you have hallways and kids' rooms and everything like that, this person needs to roam around and make sure everything's okay there. Make sure that, somebody didn't sneak off into some corner and isn't doing something terrible to somebody else, away from prying eyes, shall we say. And, just generally making the rounds, kind of like a security guard might at night, if on a premises they are covering. The third is to have somebody in the sanctuary. Now, at my church, we have multiple team members that are in the sanctuary at any given point in time, and we have a text chat whereby all the team members are on it, and every service we sound off and tell each other, where we're sitting within the sanctuary. We have a map of the sanctuary. We have cordoned off the sections A, B, C, and D, and everybody will say, I'm in section A or B, or wherever it is that they're sitting. And you can have somebody that's formally active on the team that day in that position, just being your undercover guy in the sanctuary, or your spillover team members, because you want to have more team members than you need on the team. We have 3 positions to fill for 2 services every Sunday, and we have 18 people to do that. So we've got a number of people that can fill the role. And as it turns out, I wind up having to serve maybe once a month or something like that on average. So, not including any times I pick up where somebody can't or something like that. So 3 positions: post, roaming, and sanctuary. Training, this is the big one. I recommend 3 major courses of training. The most important course of training that you can get as a response team member is medical training. And I'm talking about you need a catastrophic bleeding class, something like TCCC or Stop the Bleed, and you need something like a CPR class. Those two are absolutely, undeniably effective. They are the most likely things you are to use in a response team fashion as far as emergencies are concerned. Second most important thing you need to train in is you need to train in communication, and more specifically, you need specific training in verbal de-escalation. And that de-escalation training, there will be people that come in from the military and they have police backgrounds or what have you. Those de-escalation programs are not the same as civilian. Those are night and day difference. Military and police, generally de-escalation is all about, I have authority, I have a gun, you must submit to my authority. And we absolutely cannot have that mindset in a civilian place of worship. We have got to interact with people. We've got to talk that agitated person down off of that proverbial ledge, if you will. And the best way to do that is to interact verbally in a non-threatening way. And if your verbal de-escalation training doesn't include a significant portion about body posturing, you've gotten some shoddy training from somebody who's barely qualified. Okay, your body positioning, your body posture, your nonverbal communication is 60% of it, my friends. You need significant training in what they do, how they do it. So how it's going to look, that sort of thing. So the second most important thing you can do is communication skills, including verbal de-escalation. And that's not anywhere near what most people think it is. It's a very kind, very polite type of training. It's fun. The third type of training you need is you need firearms training. And I'm not talking about your carry permit, and I'm not talking about I qualified with law enforcement or the military. That's not enough. You need a civilian defensive pistol class, 2 days in length or longer, at a bare minimum. More is highly recommended. You need to be able to hit targets out to 25 yards or more. You need to be able to draw your handgun effectively, reholster effectively, implement medical attention if need be, and you need to know how to handle law enforcement after the fact. If your defensive pistol instruction, formal instruction in the civilian world doesn't include that, you need to get into one right away. There's got to be elements of all those things and more in that defensive pistol instruction. Police training is good. Military training is good. The handgun carry permit is good. And they're all a start, and they are certainly not where you need to be if you want to be on a response team. You need to bring your level of skill up to par so that you can effectively defend the fellow parishioners at your place of worship. Well, folks, that's about all for this video. I'd like to encourage you to hit like, subscribe, click that notification bell so that you can find out when new Patriot Training videos drop. Leave me a comment. What did you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you feel I forgot something? Was there something not mentioned that you'd like to see? Is there another topic or a related topic that you would like to hear me talk about? Put it in the comments down below. I'll be happy to respond to those comments that require a response. And I'd like to remind you that you don't have to be a patriot to train, but you do have to train if you want to be a patriot. Take care.